The morning frost clung to the cobblestones of Thornfield Manor's courtyard as Eleanor Ashford carried a basket of laundered linens toward the servants' entrance. Her worn boots made soft scraping sounds against the stone, and her breath formed delicate clouds in the November air. She had risen before dawn, as always, to complete her duties before the household stirred. At 27, she was the poorest among the manor's staff. An orphan with no family name to speak of, no dowry, no prospects beyond the meagre wages she earned scrubbing floors and mending linens. The manor belonged to Lord Cassius Ravenswood, though Eleanor had glimpsed him only twice in the 3 years she had worked there. He was a figure of mystery and wealth, appearing and disappearing without warning, conducting his affairs through his steward, while the household staff whispered about his peculiar habits. He never dined with guests. He never attended the local assemblies. Some said he was disfigured. Others claimed he was mad. Eleanor thought him simply lonely, though she had no reason to believe so beyond a feeling she could not name. She set her basket down near the kitchen door and reached into her apron pocket, withdrawing the small bundle wrapped in cloth. Her breakfast. Half a loaf of brown bread, purchased yesterday with precious coins she could ill afford to spare. Her stomach had been empty since yesterday's midday meal, but she had learned long ago to endure hunger with grace. It was simply another aspect of her station, like the chilblains on her fingers, or the ache in her lower back from bending over washboards. "Spare a crust, miss?" The voice startled her. She turned to find a man standing near the stable entrance, dressed in the simple garb of a coachman, dark wool coat worn but clean, leather gloves tucked into his belt. He was tall, with an angular face that might have been carved from marble, and eyes of such unusual clarity they seemed to catch the weak morning light and hold it. His dark hair fell across his forehead in a way that suggested both elegance and carelessness. Eleanor's first thought was that he must be newly hired, for she knew all the servants by sight. Her second thought was that he looked nothing like a coachman, despite his clothing. There was something in his bearing, in the way he held himself, that spoke of education and refinement. "You're hungry?" she asked, though the answer was obvious. His cheeks were hollow, his frame lean beneath the coat. "I've not eaten since yesterday morning," he said, and there was no shame in his admission, only a quiet statement of fact. "The steward promised wages at week's end, but that's 4 days hence." Eleanor looked down at her bread. It was all she had. If she gave it away, she would work through the day with nothing in her stomach, and tomorrow's breakfast was already uncertain. The sensible thing would be to offer him half and keep the rest for herself. Instead, she found herself holding out the entire bundle. "Take it," she said. "You need it more than I do." The man's eyes widened. For a moment, he simply stared at her, and Eleanor felt the strangest sensation, as though he were looking not at her face, but into some deeper part of her, reading something written in a language she herself could not speak. "You would give me all of it?" His voice had changed, become softer, almost wondering. "I can manage," Eleanor said, though her stomach disagreed with a low rumble she hoped he could not hear. "Welcome to Thornfield Manor, Mr. Thorn," he said quickly. "James Thorn. And you are?" "Eleanor Ashford. I work in the laundry." He took the bread from her hands, and when his fingers brushed hers, Eleanor felt a shock of cold that had nothing to do with the November morning. His skin was like ice, as though he had been standing in the frost for hours. Yet there was something in that touch that made her want to reach out again, to warm those cold hands with her own. "Eleanor," he repeated, and the way he spoke her name made it sound like something precious. "I shall not forget this kindness." Before she could respond, the kitchen door burst open and Cook's voice rang out across the courtyard. "Eleanor Ashford, those linens won't sort themselves. Get inside this instant." Eleanor grabbed her basket and hurried toward the door, but she glanced back once. The coachman, James Thorne, stood watching her with an expression she could not decipher. He raised the bread in a small salute, and then she was inside, swept into the warm chaos of the kitchen, where Cook was already berating her for dawdling. The day passed in its usual rhythm of labor. Eleanor scrubbed and wrung and hung and folded, her hands red and raw by afternoon. But her mind kept returning to the man in the courtyard, to his strange eyes and cold fingers, and the way he had looked at her as though she had given him something far more valuable than bread. That evening, as she made her way to the small room she shared with 2 other maids, she found a package wrapped in brown paper sitting on her narrow bed. Inside was a loaf of bread, not the coarse brown variety she had given away, but fine white bread, soft and fresh, the kind served at the master's table. Tucked beneath it was a note written in an elegant hand. "A debt repaid, though the true gift cannot be measured in bread. J.T." Eleanor's roommates crowded around, exclaiming over the unexpected treasure. But Eleanor barely heard them. She was thinking of cold fingers and clear eyes, and wondering what kind of coachman wrote with such refinement. The next morning she found him again in the courtyard, this time genuinely working, checking the harnesses on Lord Ravenswood's carriage, his movements practiced and sure. He looked up as she approached, and something like relief crossed his features. "You received my gift?" he asked. "I did. It was too generous. You shouldn't have spent your wages." "I spent nothing," he said. "Consider it a gift from the household stores. The cook owed me a favor." Eleanor doubted this very much. Cook owed favors to no one, least of all a newly hired coachman. But she did not press the matter. Instead, she said, "Thank you. It was the finest bread I've ever tasted." "Then you've tasted far too little of life's finer things." He set down the harness and turned to face her fully. "Tell me, Eleanor Ashford, how does a woman with such compassion end up scrubbing floors in a manor house?" The question was impertinent, the sort of inquiry that should have offended her. Yet she found herself answering honestly. "I'm an orphan. My parents died when I was 12. Fever took them both within a week. I had no relatives, no inheritance. The parish placed me in service, and I've been in service ever since." "No one to care for you," he said quietly. "No one to ensure your comfort or safety." "I care for myself well enough." She lifted her chin, defensive despite herself. "I'm grateful for my position. Many have far less." "Yes," he said, and there was something ancient in his voice, something that made her think of long years and longer memories. "Many have far less. And yet, you gave away your breakfast to a stranger. You were hungry. So were you." Eleanor had no answer for this. They stood in the courtyard as the sun climbed higher, burning away the frost, and she felt that strange pull again, the sense that this man, This James Thorne was not what he appeared to be. "I should return to my work," she said finally. "Of course." He stepped back, allowing her to pass. But as she walked away, he called after her. "Eleanor, would you walk with me this evening? After your duties are complete. There's a path through the woods I've been meaning to explore, and I find I dislike solitude." She should have said no. It was improper for a maid to walk alone with a man, even another servant. But she found herself nodding. The rose garden gate, after sunset. His smile transformed his face, made him look younger and impossibly beautiful. "I shall count the hours." The day dragged interminably. Eleanor burned her hand on a hot iron, spilled starch on her apron, and earned a sharp reprimand from the housekeeper for daydreaming. But finally, as the sun began its descent, she was released from her duties. She washed her face and hands, smoothed her hair, and slipped out through the servants' entrance. James was waiting by the rose garden gate, no longer in his coachman's garb, but dressed in simple gentleman's attire. Dark trousers, a white shirt, a coat that fit him perfectly. Eleanor stopped short, suddenly uncertain. "You're not a coachman," she said. "No," he agreed. "I'm not." "Then who are you?" He extended his hand. "Walk with me, and I'll tell you everything, or as much as I dare." Eleanor hesitated only a moment before placing her hand in his. His fingers were still cold, but this time she was prepared for it. They walked together into the woods, following a narrow path that wound between ancient oaks and towering pines. The evening light filtered through the branches in golden shafts, and somewhere in the distance, a nightingale began its song. "I'm testing my court," James said finally. "The people who serve in this household, who depend upon the Lord's generosity and fairness, I wanted to see them as they truly are, not as they present themselves to their master." "You're Lord Ravenswood?" Eleanor breathed. "I am Cassius Ravenswood, yes, though I prefer to think of myself simply as Cassius when I'm with you." Eleanor pulled her hand from his and stepped back. "You deceived me. You let me give you my breakfast when you could have bought 100 loaves." "I wanted to see what you would do," he interrupted. "Not because I doubted your kindness, but because I needed to witness it." "Eleanor, do you know what I saw in that courtyard? I saw a woman who would give everything she had to ease a stranger's hunger. I saw someone who looked at a man in servant's clothing and saw only another human being in need. Do you understand how rare that is? How precious?" "I understand that you made a fool of me," Eleanor said, though her anger was already fading. There was such earnestness in his face, such genuine emotion, that she could not sustain her indignation. "I never meant to make you feel foolish. I meant only to know you as you truly are." He took a step closer. "Eleanor, I have lived a very long time. I have seen humanity at its worst and its best. And in 3 years of observing my household, I have never witnessed a single act of pure, selfless kindness until yesterday morning, when you gave your breakfast to a man you believed to be a starving coachman." "A very long time?" Eleanor repeated, catching on the strange phrasing. "You speak as though—" "I am not what you think I am," Cassius said. "I am not entirely human, Eleanor. I am something older, something that should not exist in your world of daylight and warmth." The sun had nearly set. In the gathering darkness, His eyes seemed to gleam with their own light, pale and luminous. Eleanor's heart began to beat faster, but it was not fear that quickened her pulse. It was a strange, wild excitement. "Tell me," she whispered. "Tell me what you are." "I am a vampire," Cassio said, and the word hung between them like a confession and a curse. "I have walked this earth for more than 3 centuries. I do not age. I do not die. I sustain myself on blood, though never human blood. I swore off that practice long ago. I am a monster, Eleanor, trying very hard to be a man." She should have run. Every instinct should have screamed at her to flee, to seek safety, to alert the household that their master was a creature of darkness. Instead, she found herself asking, "Does it hurt, living so long?" The question seemed to undo something in him. His expression crumbled, revealing a depth of loneliness that made Eleanor's chest ache. "Yes," he said hoarsely, "it hurts more than I can say. Everyone I have ever cared for has aged and died while I remained unchanged. I have watched empires rise and fall. I have seen humanity commit atrocities and acts of breathtaking beauty. And through it all I have been alone. Because what woman could love a creature like me? A woman who sees the man beneath the monster?" Eleanor said softly. She reached out and took his cold hand in both of hers, trying to warm it. A woman who understands that kindness matters more than mortality. "You're not afraid of me." "I'm terrified," Eleanor admitted, "but not of you. I'm afraid of how much I want to stay here, in this forest, holding your hand. I'm afraid of how right this feels, when it should feel wrong." Cassius raised their joined hands to his lips and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. The gesture was achingly gentle, reverent. "I have been testing my household," he said, "but in truth, I have been testing myself, trying to determine if I could still recognize goodness when I saw it, trying to decide if I deserved to hope for companionship after so many years alone. And then you gave me your breakfast, and I knew." "Knew what?" "That you were the answer to a question I had been too afraid to ask." They walked deeper into the woods, and Cassius told her everything. He spoke of his transformation 300 years ago, of the nobleman who had attacked him and left him for dead, only for him to rise again as something new. He described the decades of bloodlust and violence before he learned to control his nature, the long years of isolation as he taught himself to survive on animal blood alone. He told her of the manor he had built, the household he maintained, the careful distance he kept from the people who served him in Sais, all because he feared what he might do if he allowed himself to care. "But you do care," Eleanor said. "Otherwise, you wouldn't have disguised yourself to test their character. You would simply rule through your steward and never think of them again." "I suppose you're right." He smiled, and in the moonlight, she could see the slight elongation of his canine teeth, a reminder of what he was. "You see through me rather too well, Eleanor Ashford." "Perhaps that's because we're not so different," she said. "You're alone because of what you are. I'm alone because of what I'm not. Not wealthy, not titled, not important enough for anyone to notice. We're both invisible in our own ways." "I notice you," Cassius said fiercely. "I have noticed you since the first day you arrived at Thornfield Manor. The way you sing while you work, even though you think no one can hear. The way you leave scraps for the kitchen cat, even though cook has forbidden it. The way you mend the other servants' clothing without being asked, simply because you cannot bear to see them cold. I have noticed everything, Eleanor, and I have been falling in love with you for 3 years. Too afraid to approach you, too certain that you could never accept what I am. Eleanor's ribs went still. You love me, desperately, hopelessly, with every part of me that still remembers how to love. He cupped her face in his cold hands. But I cannot ask you to share this life. It would be unfair, cruel even. You deserve warmth and daylight, children and grandchildren, a normal span of years with a normal man who can give you everything I cannot. What if I don't want normal? Eleanor asked. What if I want you? You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. She pressed her hands over his, holding them against her cheeks. I have spent my entire life being sensible, Cassius. Being grateful for scraps, accepting my place, never asking for more than I was given. And where has it gotten me? I'm 27 years old, with no prospects and no future beyond washing linens until I'm too old to work. You're offering me something extraordinary. A chance to be seen, to be valued, to be loved. Why should I refuse that simply because it comes in an unconventional form? Because I am dangerous, Cassius said. But his resistance was weakening. She could hear it in his voice, see it in the way his eyes searched her face. Because I could hurt you, even accidentally. Because you would have to hide what I am, lie to everyone you know. I'm already hiding, Eleanor interrupted. I hide my loneliness, my fear, my desperate hope that someday someone will see me as more than just a servant. You see me, Cassius. You've always seen me. That's worth any risk. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, they were bright with unshed tears. You humble me, he whispered. You, who have nothing, offering everything to a creature who has lived in darkness for 3 centuries. How can I possibly deserve such grace? You don't have to deserve it, Eleanor said. You just have to accept it, Dud. If I accept it, if I allow myself to love you openly, there will be consequences. The other servants will question, society will gossip, and there are others of my kind, Eleanor, vampires who do not share my scruples, who might see you as a weakness to be exploited. Then we'll face those consequences together. Cassius pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her, and Eleanor rested her head against his chest. There was no heartbeat. She had expected that. But there was something else, a kind of thrumming energy that spoke of power and age and fierce, protective devotion. I want to give you everything, he murmured into her hair. I want to dress you in silk and jewels, to announce to the world that you are mine and I'm yours. But I fear the attention it would bring, the questions, the danger. Then we'll be careful, Eleanor said. We'll take our time. But, Cassius, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll stop hiding. Not from society, perhaps, but from yourself. Promise me you'll stop thinking of yourself as a monster and start believing you're worthy of love. He drew back to look at her, and in his ancient eyes she saw wonder and pain and hope all tangled together. You ask the impossible. I ask only what you've already given me. A chance. He kissed her then, and his lips were cold, but gentle, reverent in their touch. It was a kiss that spoke of centuries of loneliness ending, of walls crumbling, of a heart long frozen beginning to thaw. When they finally parted, Eleanor was breathless, and Cassius was smiling, truly smiling, with a joy she suspected he had not felt in decades. "Come," he said, taking her hand. "Let me show you something." He led her through the forest to a clearing she had never seen before, where a small cottage stood beneath the trees. It was beautiful in its simplicity, with climbing roses covering the walls and candlelight glowing in the windows. "I built this place years ago," Cassius explained, "a refuge where I could escape the manor, the servants, the constant pretense of normalcy. No one knows it exists except me. I want you to have it, Eleanor. A place that's yours, where you can come whenever you need solitude or safety." "You're giving me a house?" Eleanor asked, stunned. "I'm giving you a sanctuary, and a promise that no matter what happens, you'll always have a place to call your own. You'll never be dependent on anyone's charity again, not even mine." Eleanor walked into the cottage and found it furnished with simple elegance. A bed with clean linens, a table and chairs, shelves lined with books, a fireplace stocked with wood. It was more than she had ever dreamed of owning. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say you'll come here with me," Cassius said from the doorway. "Say you'll let me court you properly, even if we must keep it secret for now. Say you'll give me time to prove that I can be the man you deserve." "You already are," Eleanor said, turning to face him. "But yes, I'll come here with you. I'll let you court me. I'll give you all the time you need." They spent that night talking by the fire, Cassius telling her stories of the centuries he had lived, Eleanor sharing the small details of her life that had shaped her into the woman she had become. As dawn approached, he walked her back to the manor, leaving her at the servants' entrance with a kiss on her forehead and a promise to see her again soon. The following weeks fell into a pattern. Eleanor worked her duties during the day, and in the evenings she would slip away to the cottage in the woods where Cassius waited for her. He taught her to read Latin and French, shared his collection of books, played the pianoforte while she listened in wonder. He told her of distant lands he had visited, of art and music and philosophy. And slowly, carefully, he began to introduce her to the household as more than just a maid. First, he elevated her position to his personal assistant, claiming he needed someone to help manage his correspondence. The other servants gossiped, of course, but Eleanor held her head high and performed her new duties with quiet competence. Then he began inviting her to dine with him in the evenings, always properly chaperoned by the housekeeper, always maintaining the appearance of professional distance even as their eyes spoke volumes across the table. But there were complications. The steward, Mr. Pemberton, grew suspicious of Eleanor's rapid advancement. He began asking pointed questions about her background, her qualifications, her relationship with Lord Ravenswood. And one evening, as Eleanor was leaving the manor to meet Cassius, Pemberton stopped her in the hallway. "Miss Ashford," he said, his tone unctuous. "A word, if you please." Eleanor's heart sank, but she maintained her composure. "Of course, Mr. Pemberton. I've been reviewing the household accounts," he said, "and I've noticed certain irregularities. Fine bread appearing in the servants' quarters, a cottage in the woods being furnished and maintained. His lordship's sudden interest in a woman who, forgive me for saying so, has no family, no connections, no reason to be elevated above her station. I'm sure I don't know what you're implying, Eleanor said carefully. I'm implying that you've bewitched him somehow, that you're taking advantage of his eccentricities for your own gain, and I cannot allow it to continue. You cannot allow it, Eleanor repeated, her temper flaring. Mr. Pemberton, I have done nothing improper. Lord Ravenswood has been kind enough to recognize my abilities and offer me greater responsibilities. If you have concerns about his decisions, I suggest you take them up with him directly. Oh, I intend to, Pemberton said coldly, and I intend to recommend your immediate dismissal. A woman like you has no place in a respectable household. Eleanor wanted to rage at him, to defend herself, but she knew it would do no good. Pemberton had already made up his mind. She excused herself and fled to the cottage, where she found Cassius waiting for her. What's wrong? He asked immediately, reading the distress in her face. She told him everything, and as she spoke, she watched his expression darken. Pemberton has always been ambitious, he said grimly. He resents any threat to his authority. I should have anticipated this. What will you do? Eleanor asked. I'll dismiss him. No. Eleanor caught his arm. That would only confirm his suspicions. He'd spread rumors, damage your reputation and mine. We need to be smarter than that. Cassius looked at her with admiration. What do you suggest? Let him make his accusations to you directly. Then offer him a choice. Accept a generous severance and a glowing reference, or face an investigation into his own management of the household accounts. I've seen the ledgers, Cassius. There are discrepancies that suggest he's been skimming funds for years. You're brilliant, Cassius said, pulling her into his arms. Absolutely brilliant. But Eleanor, this means we'll have to be even more careful. If Pemberton is suspicious, others will be as well. I know, Eleanor just said, but I'm not giving you up. Not for Pemberton, not for anyone. The confrontation with Pemberton happened the next day. Cassius summoned him to his study, and Eleanor was present as his assistant, taking notes. Pemberton launched into his accusations, painting Eleanor as a scheming opportunist and Cassius as a fool blinded by infatuation. Cassius listened in silence, his face impassive. When Pemberton finally finished, Cassius said quietly, "Are you quite done?" "I am, my lord." "I hope you'll see reason." "What I see," Cassius interrupted, "is a man who has embezzled nearly £500 from this household over the past 3 years. Miss Ashford discovered the discrepancies while reviewing the accounts at my request. I was planning to address the matter privately, but since you've chosen to make accusations of your own, let us lay everything on the table." Pemberton's face went white. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't compound your crimes with lies." Cassius's voice was cold, and Eleanor glimpsed the ancient power beneath his civilized veneers. "You have 2 choices, Pemberton. You may resign immediately, accept a modest severance, and leave with a neutral reference. Or I can report your theft to the magistrate and see you prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Choose quickly." Pemberton chose the first option, of course. Within the hour, he had packed his belongings and departed Thornfield Manor, his tail between his legs. The other servants whispered about his sudden departure. But Cassius spread the story that Pemberton had received an opportunity elsewhere. And gradually, The gossip died down, but the incident had shaken Eleanor. That evening, as she sat with Cassius in the cottage, she said, "This is only the beginning, isn't it? There will always be people who question us, who try to tear us apart." "Yes," Cassius said honestly, "there will always be obstacles. But Eleanor, I've lived 300 years, and I've learned that the things worth having are the things worth fighting for. You are worth fighting for, darling. Even if it means revealing what you are." He was quiet for a long moment. "There are others of my kind," he whispered finally. "A council of sorts, vampires who have learned to live peacefully among humans. They have rules, laws that govern our behavior. One of those laws is that we must never reveal our nature to human elements unless we intend to transform them." Eleanor's throat closed like a fist. "Transform them? You mean make them like us? Immortal?" "It's a choice that cannot be undone, Eleanor. Once made, there is no going back." "Is that what you want?" Eleanor asked carefully. "For me to become like you?" "I want you to be happy," Cassius said. "If that means remaining human, living a normal lifespan, then I will cherish every moment we have together and let you go when the time comes. But if you chose transformation, if you chose to spend eternity with me, I would count myself the most fortunate creature ever to walk this earth." Eleanor thought about this for a long time. She thought about her life as it was, the endless labor, the poverty, the certainty that she would die as she had lived, invisible and forgotten. And she thought about what Cassius was offering, not just immortality, but a life filled with love and learning, adventure and purpose. "I need time," she said finally. "This isn't a decision I can make lightly." "Take all the time you need," Cassius said. "I've waited 3 centuries for you. I can wait a little longer." But time, it seemed, was not on their side. A week later, a carriage arrived at Thornfield Manor, bearing 3 passengers, 2 men and a woman, all dressed in the height of fashion, all radiating the same cold, ageless beauty that marked Cassius. They were vampires, members of the council, and they had come to investigate reports of Cassius's relationship with a human woman. Cassius met them in his study, and though Eleanor was not invited to attend, she listened at the door, her heart pounding. "You've been careless, Ravenswood," said a woman's voice, sharp and cold, "elevating a servant girl, spending your evenings alone with her, making no secret of your affection. You know the rule." "I've broken no rules," Cassius replied calmly. "I've revealed nothing to her that would endanger our kind." "Haven't you?" This was a man's voice, smooth and dangerous. "We have witnesses who say she comes and goes from a cottage in the woods at all hours, that she dines with you privately, that you look at her as though she were the sun and you a man dying of cold. You're in love with her, Ravenswood. Don't insult us by denying it." "I don't deny it," Cassius said. "I love her, but I've told her nothing. She knows me only as a man with peculiar habits." "Liar," the woman again. "We can smell the truth on you. She knows what you are, which means you have 2 choices. Transform her, or let us kill her. Those are the only ways to keep our secret safe." Eleanor's vision sharpened to a point. She burst into the room without thinking, driven by a fury she had never felt before. "You will not threaten me in my own home," she said. her voice shaking but firm. The three vampires turned to stare at her. The woman, beautiful and terrible, with hair like spun gold and eyes like chips of ice, laughed. "Your home? You're a servant girl playing at being a lady. This is not your home, child, and you are not safe here." "She is under my protection," Cassius said, moving to stand beside Eleanor. "And yes, she knows what I am. I told her because I love her, and I will not build a relationship on lies. If that violates your rules, then punish me. But leave her alone." "No," the woman said mockingly. "But foolish. The rules exist for a reason, Ravenswood. Humans cannot be trusted with our secrets. They fear what they don't understand, and fear breeds violence. How long before she tells someone? How long before a mob arrives at your door with torches and stakes?" "I would never," Eleanor began, but the woman cut her off. "You say that now, but what about when he refuses to transform you? What about when you grow old and bitter, watching him remain young while you wither? What about when you're on your deathbed, desperate for more time, and he still says no? Will you keep his secret then?" "Yes," Eleanor said firmly. "Because I love him. Because I understand that transformation is not something to be demanded or coerced. It's a gift, and gifts are given freely or not at all." The three vampires exchanged glances. Finally, the second man, who had been silent until now, spoke. "She's sincere," he said quietly. "I can feel it. She means what she says." "For now," the woman said. "But what about in 10 years, 20, 50? Then we'll deal with it then," Cassius said. "But I will not let you harm her. If you insist on enforcing your rules, then I'll leave the council. I'll take Eleanor somewhere far from here, somewhere you'll never find us." "You'd give up everything for her?" the first man asked. "Your position, your wealth, your standing among our kind?" "In a heartbeat," Cassius said. The three vampires were silent for a long moment. Then the quiet man said, "I propose a compromise. Let them be together, but under observation. If the woman proves trustworthy, if she keeps our secret, then in time we can consider allowing her transformation. But if she betrays us—" "She won't," Cassius said. "If she betrays us," the man continued firmly, "then we will take action. Do you accept these terms?" Cassius looked at Eleanor, a question in his eyes. She nodded. "We accept," he said. The woman looked displeased, but she did not argue. "Very well. But know this, Ravenswood. We will be watching. One misstep, and she dies." They left as suddenly as they had arrived, and Eleanor collapsed into a chair, shaking with reaction. Cassius knelt beside her, taking her hands in his. "I'm so sorry," he said. "I never wanted you to face that. I never wanted you to be threatened." "It's not your fault," Eleanor Sorsa said. "They're afraid, that's all. Afraid of change, afraid of losing control. But Cassius, I meant what I said. I'll keep your secret. I'll prove to them that I can be trusted." "I know you will," he said. "But Eleanor, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you before. But I was afraid." "What is it?" "The council's rules. They're not just about secrecy. They're about power. Vampires like me, who choose to live peacefully, who refuse to prey on humans. We're a threat to the old ways. There are others of our kind who believe we should rule over humanity, not hide among them. The council maintains the balance, but it's a fragile peace. If they decide you're a threat, if they decide I've become too human, too soft, they could move against both of us. Then we'll be careful, Eleanor said. We'll show them we're no threat, and in time maybe they'll accept us. Maybe, Cassius said. But he did not sound convinced. The months that followed were difficult. Eleanor continued her work at the manor, now officially serving as Cassius's personal secretary, but she felt the weight of unseen eyes watching her every move. She was careful never to speak of vampires, never to hint at Cassius's true nature, even to the other servants. And slowly, gradually, the tension began to ease. Cassius courted her openly now, taking her to the theatre in London, introducing her to his human friends and business associates as his intended bride. Society gossiped, of course, a lord marrying a woman with no family, no dowry. But Cassius silenced the worst of the rumours with his wealth and influence. And Eleanor, who had spent her life being invisible, found herself thrust into a world of silk gowns and glittering ballrooms, of opera boxes and country house parties. It was overwhelming and wonderful and terrifying all at once. But through it all, Cassius was beside her, steady and patient, teaching her how to navigate this new world, while never making her feel inadequate for not knowing its rules. "You're doing beautifully," he told her one evening as they danced at a ball. "Everyone adores you. They tolerate me because I'm with you," Eleanor said. "But I see the way they look at me. I'm still just a servant girl in their eyes." "Then they're fools," Cassius said. "You have more grace and kindness in your little finger than most of these people have in their entire bodies. And anyone who can't see that isn't worth your concern." But there was one person whose opinion did concern Eleanor, Lady Catherine Thornbury, a wealthy widow and longtime friend of Cassius. She had been pursuing him for years, and she made no secret of her displeasure at his engagement to Eleanor. "She's using you," Lady Catherine told Cassius one evening, loud enough for Eleanor to overhear. "Can't you see? She's a fortune hunter, latching onto the first wealthy man who showed her kindness. You deserve better, Cassius. You deserve someone of your own class." Eleanor felt the words like a slap. But before she could respond, Cassius said coldly, "What I deserve, Catherine, is someone who sees me for who I truly am. Someone who would give me her last crust of bread without hesitation. Someone who accepts me, flaws and all, and asks for nothing in return. That person is Eleanor, and I'll thank you not to insult her again." Lady Catherine left the ball in a fury, and Eleanor never saw her again. But the encounter left her shaken. "What if she's right?" she asked Cassius later. "What if I am using you?" "You're not," Cassius said firmly. "Eleanor, you gave me your breakfast when you thought I was a penniless coachman. You've asked me for nothing, not jewels, not gowns, not even a guarantee of transformation. You love me for who I am, not what I can give you. That's the opposite of using someone." "But I do want things," Ellen admitted. "I want to spend eternity with you. I want to see the world, to learn everything you can teach me. I want to wake up beside you every morning for the rest of time." "Is that selfish? It's human," Cassius said gently, "and there's nothing wrong with wanting those things. The question is, are you ready for them? Because transformation is forever, Eleanor. Once it's done, you can never go back. You'll never age, never die, never have children. You'll have to watch everyone you know grow old and pass away. You'll have to hide what you are for the rest of eternity. It's a heavy burden. Eleanor thought about this for a long time. She thought about the life she would be giving up, the possibility of children, of grandchildren, of a normal human death. But she also thought about the life she would be gaining, centuries with Cassius, the chance to make a real difference in the world, the opportunity to become something more than she had ever dreamed possible. "I'm ready," she said finally. "I want this, Cassius. I want you, and I want the life we can build together. Transform me." "Are you certain?" Cassius asked, his voice thick with emotion. "Because once I do this, there's no going back." "I'm certain," Eleanor said. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." But before Cassius could respond, there was a knock at the door. It was the quiet man from the council, the one who had proposed the compromise. His name, Eleanor had learned, was Marcus, and he was the eldest of their kind, the one who had founded the council centuries ago. "I've come to witness," Marcus said simply. "If you're going to transform her, it must be done properly with the council's blessing. Otherwise, you'll both be hunted." "And do we have the council's blessing?" Cassius asked warily. "You do," Marcus said. "Eleanor has proven herself trustworthy. She's kept our secret, even when it would have been easier to reveal it. She's earned the right to choose transformation, if that's what she truly wants." He turned to Eleanor. "But I must ask you one final time, child. Are you certain this is what you want? Not because you fear losing him, not because you crave immortality, but because you truly wish to spend eternity as one of us?" Eleanor met his ancient gaze without flinching. "I'm certain," she said. "I choose this life. I choose Cassius, and I choose to become something more than I was." Marcus nodded slowly. "Then it shall be done. But know this, transformation is painful. You will feel as though you're dying because, in a sense, you are. Your human life will end, and something new will begin. Do you understand?" "I understand," Eleanor said. Cassius took her hands, his expression torn between joy and fear. "I love you," he said. "No matter what happens, no matter how difficult this becomes, remember that I love you." "I love you too," Eleanor said. Now and forever. The transformation happened that night, in the cottage in the woods where they had first confessed their love. Cassius bit her gently, his fangs piercing the soft skin of her throat, and Eleanor felt a coldness spread through her veins like ice water. It hurt. Marcus had been right about that, but it was a pain she could bear, because Cassius held her through it all, whispering words of love and encouragement. When it was over, Eleanor opened her eyes to a world transformed. Colors were brighter, sounds were sharper, and she could hear Cassius's breathing, Marcus's heartbeat, the rustle of leaves outside the cottage. She felt strong and alive and utterly changed. "How do you feel?" Cassius asked anxiously. "Like myself," Eleanor said wonderingly, "but more so, like I've finally become who I was always meant to be." Marcus smiled, the first time Eleanor had seen him show any emotion. "Welcome to immortality, Eleanor Ravenswood," he said. "May you use it wisely." He left them alone then, and Cassius pulled Eleanor into his arms. We did it, he said. We're together. Forever. Forever, Eleanor agreed. And then she kissed him, and it was different now. She could feel his coldness matching her own, could sense the power thrumming beneath his skin that now thrummed beneath hers as well. They were equals now, partners in every sense of the word. But their happiness was short-lived. The next morning, a messenger arrived with terrible news. The council had been attacked by a faction of vampires who opposed their peaceful coexistence with humans. Marcus was dead, killed in the fighting, and the council was in disarray. "They'll come for us next," Cassius said grimly. "The old guard. They believe vampires should rule over humans, not hide among them. They'll see our relationship as a betrayal, a sign of weakness." "Then we'll fight them," Eleanor said. "Well, we can't fight them alone. They're too powerful, too numerous." "Then we'll find allies," Eleanor just said. "There must be others like us, vampires who believe in peace, who want to live alongside humans rather than dominate them. We'll find them, and we'll build a new council, a better one." Cassius looked at her with something like awe. "You've been immortal for less than a day, and you're already planning a revolution." "You said I was brilliant." Eleanor reminded him with a small smile. "I'm simply proving you right." And so they began their work. They traveled across Europe, seeking out vampires who shared their philosophy, who believed in coexistence rather than domination. It was dangerous work. More than once, they barely escaped with their lives. But slowly, they built a network of allies. And when the old guard finally came for them, they were ready. The battle was fierce but brief. Cassius and Eleanor fought side by side, their love giving them strength. And when it was over, the old guard had been defeated. A new council was formed, one dedicated to maintaining peace between vampires and humans, and Cassius and Eleanor were given seats of honor. But they did not stay on the council for long. They had other plans, a life to build, a world to explore, centuries of love to share. They returned to Thornfield Manor, where they lived quietly, helping the local community, protecting those who could not protect themselves. And though they could never reveal what they truly were, they became known as benefactors and friends, beloved by all who knew them. Years passed, then decades. The world changed around them, but their love remained constant. And on quiet evenings, when the manor was still and the servants had retired for the night, Cassius would take Eleanor's hand and lead her to the cottage in the woods, where they would sit by the fire and remember the morning when a poor maid had shared her last piece of bread with a stranger. "Do you ever regret it?" Cassius asked her once. "Giving up your humanity? Your chance at a normal life?" "Never," Eleanor said. "You gave me something far more valuable than a normal life. You gave me purpose, adventure, and love that will last forever. How could I regret that?" "I don't deserve you," Cassius said, as he had said so many times before. "You don't have to deserve me," Eleanor replied, as she always did. "You just have to love me." "That," Cassius said, pulling her close, "is the easiest thing I've ever done." And as they sat together in the firelight, two immortal beings who had found each other across centuries of loneliness, they knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Because what's true love, the kind that sees beyond surface and status, beyond mortality and fear, was the most powerful force in any world, mortal or immortal. The bread Eleanor had shared that cold November morning had been a small thing, a simple act of kindness. But it had changed everything. It had opened Cassius's heart to hope, had shown him that redemption was possible, that even a creature of darkness could find light, and it had given Eleanor a life beyond her wildest dreams, a love that would endure for all eternity. In the end, that was all that mattered. Not the struggles they had faced, not the battles they had fought, but the quiet moments of connection, the gentle touches, the whispered words of love. They had found each other in a world that had tried to keep them apart, and they had chosen to stay together, no matter the cost. And though they knew their path would not always be easy, though they understood that immortality brought its own sorrows and challenges, they faced the future with courage and hope. Because they had each other, and that was enough, more than enough. It was everything. As dawn approached and they prepared to return to the manor, Cassius paused at the cottage door. He looked back at Eleanor, his eternal love, his partner in all things, and smiled. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" Eleanor asked. "For seeing me," Cassius said. "For sharing your bread. For choosing me, even when you knew what I was. For giving me a reason to believe in love again." Eleanor crossed to him and took his hand, their fingers intertwining. Cold meeting cold, strength meeting strength, love meeting love. "You don't have to thank me," she said. "We chose each other. That's what love is." And together, hand in hand, they walked back through the forest toward the manor, toward their life, toward the endless tomorrows that stretched before them. The sun would rise soon, and they would retreat to the shadows as they always did. But the darkness held no fear for them now. They had found their light in each other, and that light would guide them through all the centuries to come.